Every year, over 2.5 million tons of farmed salmon are harvested worldwide. That's more than the weight of 250 Eiffel Towers pulled from the ocean. But that perfectly pink fillet on your plate, it likely never swam in a wild river. It was born in a hatchery, raised in a floating pen, and fed a diet designed in a lab. Today, we're going inside the high-stakes world of modern salmon farming, where innovation meets controversy, and the future of our oceans may depend on getting it right. For centuries, salmon was a wild treasure, migrating thousands of miles from rivers to the open ocean and back, feeding indigenous communities, shaping ecosystems, and inspiring myths across the northern hemisphere. But by the 1970s, wild salmon stocks were collapsing. Overfishing, dams, pollution, and habitat loss had pushed iconic runs like those in the Pacific Northwest and Norway to the brink. Enter aquaculture. Norway pioneered the first commercial salmon farms in the 1970s, using floating net pens in sheltered fjords. The idea was simple: raise salmon in captivity, ease pressure on wild populations, and meet growing global demand for this rich, omega-3 packed fish. It worked too well. By the 1990s, farmed salmon had overtaken wild in global markets. Today, over 95% of the salmon sold in the U.S. is farm-raised, mostly from Norway, Chile, Canada, and Scotland. But early salmon farms came with hidden costs. Net pens leaked waste into surrounding waters. Escaped farmed salmon, bred to be docile and fast-growing, interbred with wild fish, weakening their genetics. Sea lice, a natural parasite, exploded in dense pens and spread to wild juvenile salmon, killing them by the millions. In Chile, entire regions were abandoned after disease outbreaks. In British Columbia, wild salmon populations plummeted near farm sites. The industry was at a crossroads: keep expanding at any cost or reinvent itself. And in the last decade, that reinvention has begun, in labs, in land-based tanks, and even in the open ocean. But can salmon farming ever truly be sustainable? To answer that, we need to understand how it works today, beneath the surface. Modern salmon farming is a three-stage journey, each phase more controlled and more industrialized than the last. It starts in freshwater hatcheries, often miles inland. Here, fertilized salmon eggs, sourced from broodstock kept for breeding, are incubated in trays of cold, oxygen-rich water. After a few months, they hatch into alevins, then grow into fingerlings. At this stage, they undergo a biological shift called smoltification. Their bodies prepare to survive in saltwater. That's when they're moved to marine grow-out sites, massive floating net pens anchored in coastal fjords or bays. Each pen can hold 200,000 to 300,000 fish, swimming in a space the size of several Olympic pools. They'll live here for 12 to 24 months, fed a pelleted diet of fish meal, fish oil, plant proteins, and, critically, astaxanthin, a pigment that gives their flesh that signature pink color. Wild salmon get this naturally from eating krill. Farmed salmon get it from supplements. Feeding is automated, often by underwater cameras and AI that adjust portions based on fish behavior. Oxygen levels, temperature, and waste are monitored constantly. But this system has vulnerabilities. Net pens are exposed to storms, algae blooms, and disease. And sea lice, tiny parasites that feed on salmon skin, thrive in crowded conditions. To combat them, farms use everything from freshwater baths to cleaner fish, like wrasse, that eat the lice off salmon's bodies. Some even use lasers to zap lice off in real time. When salmon reach 5 to 6 kilograms, it's harvest time. Workers use well boats, specialized vessels that pump fish from pens into chilled seawater, stunning them quickly and humanely. From there, they're gutted, filleted, and blast frozen within hours. Most are shipped frozen across the globe. Norwegian salmon lands in New York, Chilean salmon in Tokyo, Canadian salmon in Dubai. But a new method is gaining ground: land-based recirculating aquaculture systems, or RAS. Imagine warehouse-sized tanks filled with fresh water mixed with salt, where salmon swim in controlled currents, and 99% of the water is filtered and reused. No ocean access needed, no escapes, no sea lice. It's cleaner, but also far more expensive. So while net pens still dominate, the race is on to scale RAS before wild ecosystems pay an even higher price. And that price, it's already showing up in dying wild salmon, in polluted seabeds, and in coastal communities caught between jobs and ecology. Salmon farming isn't just nets and pens anymore. It's data, robotics, and deep-sea engineering. At the cutting edge, AI-powered cameras track every fish in real time. Using computer vision, they count salmon, measure growth, and even detect early signs of disease or stress, like clamped fins or erratic swimming, before a human ever notices. Feeding, once done by guesswork, is now precision science. Smart feeders use sonar and machine learning to see how much food is left in the water after each meal. If pellets sink uneaten, the system reduces the next portion, cutting waste, saving money, and reducing pollution. Then there's the fight against sea lice, the industry's biggest biological threat. Beyond cleaner fish and freshwater baths, some farms now deploy submersible lice lasers, like the cleaner bots that scan each salmon as it swims by and zap lice off with millisecond precision. Others use hydrogen peroxide treatments or thermal delousing, where fish swim through warm water for seconds to loosen parasites. But the real revolution is happening on land. In facilities from Maine to Tasmania, RAS, recirculating aquaculture systems, are redefining what's possible. These closed-loop tanks filter waste through biofilters, remove CO2, reintroduce oxygen, and reuse 99% of their water. Everything is monitored: pH, ammonia, nitrate, even fish heart rates via sensors. And because they're inland, they eliminate two of the biggest risks of ocean farming: escapes and ecosystem contamination. Even genetics is evolving. Companies like Benchmark Genetics and Cermak now breed salmon for disease resistance, feed efficiency, and faster growth, using genomic selection without GMOs. Some lines are even being developed to better tolerate warmer waters as oceans heat up. Meanwhile, blockchain traceability is entering the supply chain. Scan a barcode on your salmon fillet, and you might soon see its hatchery, its ocean site, its feed composition, and its harvest date. All of this points to one goal: doing more with less impact. But innovation alone won't solve the deeper question: can we farm a predator like salmon at scale without unraveling the marine web it once belonged to? That's where the environmental reckoning hits hardest. Salmon farming promises a solution: more protein, less pressure on wild fish. But in practice, it's created new ecological crises, some visible, others hidden beneath the waves. Let's start with sea lice. In dense net pens, lice populations explode. When wild juvenile salmon, just inches long, migrate past these farms on their way to the ocean, they get swarmed. A single louse can kill a young wild salmon. In British Columbia and Norway, studies have linked farm-driven lice outbreaks to local collapses of wild salmon runs, some populations down by over 80%. Then there's waste. Each large salmon farm produces waste equivalent to a small city's sewage output, but with no treatment plant. Uneaten feed and feces sink to the seafloor, smothering marine life, depleting oxygen, and creating dead zones. In Chile, entire fjords have been abandoned after becoming toxic sludge pits. Escapes are another ticking time bomb. Storms, equipment failure, or human error can release tens of thousands of farmed salmon at once. These fish are domesticated. They don't migrate right. They're poor at avoiding predators, and they interbreed with wild salmon, diluting genetic resilience. In 2017, a single pen collapse in Washington state released 300,000 non-native Atlantic salmon into Pacific waters, an ecological emergency. And let's talk feed. Salmon are carnivores. Historically, their feed relied heavily on wild-caught anchovies, sardines, and menhaden, meaning we're fishing down the food chain to feed farmed fish. It took up to 5 pounds of wild fish to produce 1 pound of farmed salmon. That ratio has improved, thanks to plant proteins, algae oils, and even insect meal. But the industry still consumes 20% of the world's fish meal and fish oil, much of it from poorly managed fisheries in West Africa and Southeast Asia. Still, progress is real. Norway, the world's largest producer, now mandates fallowing, resting farm sites between cycles, enforces strict lice limits, and is rapidly shifting toward closed containment systems. Scotland has paused new licenses near wild salmon rivers, and land-based RAS farms in the US and Europe prove that zero-discharge, zero-escape salmon farming is technically possible. The question isn't whether salmon farming can be sustainable. It's whether the global market will pay the higher price, and whether regulators will demand it before wild salmon vanish for good. Because once they're gone, no technology can bring them back. Salmon isn't just a fish, it's a lifeline. For coastal communities from Norway to British Columbia, salmon farming means jobs, infrastructure, and economic survival. In remote fjords where tourism or logging have faded, a salmon farm can be the only major employer, supporting not just fishers, but engineers, vets, feed suppliers, and transport crews. Globally, the industry is worth over $20 billion a year, with Norway alone exporting more than $8 billion in farmed salmon annually, more than its oil exports in some years. In the U.S., Americans eat over 2.5 pounds of salmon per person every year, making it the second most consumed seafood after shrimp. And thanks to farming, that rich, buttery fillet is now affordable year-round, not just a luxury for summer grilling. But that affordability comes with trade-offs. In Chile, the world's second-largest producer, salmon farming has brought investment to the south, but also conflict. Indigenous Mapuche communities accuse farms of polluting ancestral waters and ignoring local voices. Labor conditions in processing plants have faced scrutiny, with reports of long hours and limited union rights. In Scotland, tensions run high between farmers and wild salmon conservationists. Anglers and ecologists argue that open net farms are dooming wild Atlantic salmon, already critically endangered. Fishermen who once relied on wild catches now watch their livelihoods vanish, while farm profits flow to multinational corporations. Yet for many rural families, there's no easy alternative. Shutting down farms overnight could collapse local economies faster than wild stocks can recover. That's why the industry is caught between two truths. It provides real economic opportunity in places that need it, but it also risks irreversible harm to ecosystems that have sustained people far longer. Now, consumers are starting to tip the balance. Demand for ASC-certified, organic, or RAS-grown salmon is rising, especially in Europe and among high-end U.S. retailers like Whole Foods. Companies like Atlantic Sapphire and Blue House Salmon market their land-raised fish as Ocean Positive, a premium product for eco-conscious buyers. But here's the hard reality. Land-based salmon costs 2 to 3 times more than net pen farmed. For most families, that's out of reach. So the future of salmon farming won't be decided in labs or boardrooms alone. It'll be shaped by what we choose to buy, what governments regulate, and whether we value wild salmon enough to change the system. Because this fish connects us all, from fjords to dinner tables, and its fate is now in our hands. The future of salmon farming is splitting into two paths. On one side, evolution, making ocean net pens cleaner, smarter, and more regulated. Countries like Norway are leading this charge, using AI monitoring, mandatory fallowing, and strict sea lice thresholds. They're even testing semi-closed pens, submerged systems that limit waste leakage and lice transfer. The goal: squeeze every last drop of sustainability out of the open ocean model. On the other side, revolution, leaving the ocean altogether. Land-based RAS, recirculating aquaculture systems, are scaling fast. In Florida, Atlantic Sapphire operates one of the world's largest indoor salmon farms, using just 1% of the water per kilogram compared to net pens. In Denmark, Nordic Aquafarms aims to supply the entire U.S. East Coast with zero-impact salmon. No escapes, no lice, no pollution. The challenge: energy and cost. RAS farms require massive power for filtration, oxygenation, and temperature control. If that energy comes from fossil fuels, the carbon footprint can offset ocean benefits. But as renewables expand, that math is changing. Meanwhile, feed innovation is accelerating. Algae-based omega-3s, yeast proteins, and even insect meal from black soldier flies are replacing wild fish in salmon diets. Some startups are engineering microbial oils that mimic fish oil perfectly, cutting reliance on overfished oceans. And then there's policy. The European Union is pushing stricter aquaculture regulations. Canada is re-evaluating open net farms near wild migration routes. And in the U.S., the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, is fast-tracking permits for offshore, deep ocean pens, far from wild salmon corridors, though environmentalists remain skeptical. But perhaps the biggest shift is cultural. Wild salmon are more than a resource, they're a symbol. For indigenous nations from Alaska to Scotland, they're tied to identity, ceremony, and survival. Their decline isn't just ecological, it's spiritual. That's why the most promising future might not be either wild or farmed, but a balance. Protect and restore wild rivers, phase out open net pens near critical habitat, scale clean inland farming for mass demand, reserve wild salmon for cultural and ecological restoration. Because we don't have to choose between feeding people and healing oceans. We just need systems that do both. And that starts with understanding what's really on our plate. If this look inside the world of salmon farming changed how you see that pink fillet on your plate, you're not alone. This isn't just about fish. It's about choices between convenience and conservation, between jobs and ecosystems, between what's possible today and what's necessary for tomorrow. So we're curious, would you pay more for salmon that never touched the ocean? Or do you believe net pen farming can be cleaned up without abandoning coastal communities? Let us know in the comments. We read every single one. If you found this eye-opening, do us a quick favor. Hit like, share this with someone who eats salmon, and subscribe if you haven't already. We're on a mission to uncover how our food is really made, with honesty, depth, and no hidden agendas. Next time, we're turning to one of the most controversial proteins on the planet, beef. From feedlots to lab-grown steaks, we'll explore whether the era of industrial cattle farming is coming to an end or just getting started. Stay curious, eat thoughtfully, and we'll see you in the next one.